Wrong. All right, just make sure you don't squeeze your mics, Josh.
All right, guys, welcome to Q&A 3 here with Ty and Mike. We have a random guest here who's joining us. Tristan coming for his drop-in drink, which is going to take a little bit longer. Special be taking it back to
I'll
his
be back
colleague.
in a second, Jamie.
Jamie, if you're watching, you're going to be waiting a little bit.
Where is this guy?
All right, so a couple of questions that we've had through the week. We're going to start basically straight away with question 1. Ty, you can kick us off. I'm injured. What course of action should I take?
This would be the initial injury. So you've just gotten injured. Whether most times we see actually it's outside the gym, touch football, hiking, playing with the kids, something random. It's never actually exciting. I always get upset. People, I'm like, why couldn't you do it here so we could see what happened and we have a bit more understanding information?
Yeah, when you actually have the camera out.
Yeah, when I'm recording you and you screw yourself over. But no, it normally happens outside. Roll an ankle. My shoulder hurts, or I went to pick something up and my back hurts. What do I do now?
Slut dropping on the D floor.
That's it. So, it depends. I guess it depends on the severity of the injury. It's going to play a big part. Like, how badly did I injure myself? Most times we'll see something minor, a bit of shoulder niggle, or maybe, a lower back disc bulge or something like that. First things first is obviously respond time. So, like, looking at exercises you're performing and things that respond good and respond poorly. If you bend over to pick up a bar and your back flares up, probably not a great idea. But if you sit down and do some back supported dumbbell shoulder press and have no pain, then that's at least some feedback. You're like, okay, I can do this movement in this variation or this technique and it has no issues. That's sweet. The big point is with all these, these points that we're going to cover today, with the injuries, is making sure that no matter what, we keep showing up. As it's proven time and time again, exercise and just movement in general is going to enhance your recovery, not reduce it, as long as we are following guidelines that we're not re-aggravating the injury or putting ourselves in a position where we're going to hurt ourselves.
Yeah, and if for anyone who follows any of the research, it's very fascinating to see. You can have two people with the same injury. One person will have a mindset of, it's just a niggle, or like it's just a minor inconvenience. I'm going to keep training, and they don't give it much attention and much value. And the other person is like, it's the end of my world. I can't train. Let's say it's a grade 2 tear through the delt. All right. And the way it plays out and affects the person directly correlates with the amount of attention they give it. So if they think it's severe, then it tends to play out that way. As where the person is a little bit more reserved and doesn't give it as much attention, tends to be the one that recovers a lot faster and tends to be the one that's able to get better results.
It can also almost look like part of someone's identity as well. Yeah. Like some people are like, I'm that guy with the torn rotator cuff, or I'm the guy with the surgeries on the ankles, and then what's the recovery prognosis on that?
Pain is a funny thing. Like, I play with some of the guys in the morning because they'll be training and they'll be like, oh yeah, like it's warm up, and they got their knee sleeves on. He's like, oh yeah, I've had knee surgery. I'm like, bro, it's the wrong knee. You told me it was the other one last week.
Whoa.
And like, they don't, like, I'm making shit up, but they question it and they're like, what? I have it on my wrong knee. And it's like, it'd just be funny if you like completely convinced them that they had it on the wrong knee, put it on the other knee, and then just see what actually played out.
It's psychologically, like, I got 2 different opinions from 2 different physios with like a bit of a back flare up. And one of the physios was basically exactly the same as you guys. And I decided to go with that one because it was more of a relaxed, okay, get moving, follow your pain threshold, but let's not call it the end of the world.
Yeah.
You don't have a broken rib, because I was like, oh my God, I broke my rib.
I'm done.
I've definitely broke my rib. Look, it's popping. That's gonna. But then the other physio was like, oh, that's probably just like gas in between the joint, or just like,
could be anything.
Judge your pain, like, get back to movement and mobilizing as soon as possible, rather than, one opinion was 15 days. Don't do anything for 15 days. Don't touch it. Tyler was like, just walk, do what's within your pain threshold. Don't let it get more than like I think you don't want more than like a 6 out of 10.
6, you want to be under,
I usually say 3 to 4.
3 to 4?
So something low.
So a bit more conservative, but that's not zero pain.
Yeah, that's not.
You can say 6 pretty safely, because most people's pain tolerance is very low. So
unless you're a baby.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there'll be the odd person who has a super high pain tolerance. So 6 is like a 10. You're like, okay, back it right off.
Yeah.
Majority of people would be a little bit dramatic with it.
That's it. And I think, Tristan, you're the one who's had a few different variables in your training, especially your knees being a big issue. Run through just very briefly, like, what the issue has been and some of the recovery methods that you've applied to that.
Yes. So whatever the acronym is, patellofemoral pain. So I did also ask the physios about that. And like Matt Gilpin, he gave me a few little little things to do, all of which were movement based, which is pretty interesting. They weren't like
Rest.
They weren't rest, but there was also like not too much don'ts. It was more focused on do's, which I think was really good for me because then I had a way to actually, there's a saying, paint the barn and the crops will grow.
There you go.
Right? And I really like that. So sometimes just attend to what can be attended to and then let things figure themselves out, which is probably that natural course of healing. Allow that to sort of happen while you're not doing anything irresponsible with the knee. And I do notice like a massive mindset change, which really impacted that pain. For me, like when I was, when Matt was my coach, I was getting pain doing knees over toes. And so for me, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to knees over toe lunge. I'm just not going to lunge. And Matt's trying to fix that problem. Whereas I had this mindset of that hurts, so I'm not going to do it. Whereas like I've gotten a bit healthier and a bit less, I don't know, sooky. And so now we'll actually have like a few mobilizing things or even squat through it. And, despite me asking you, for example, should I get squat shoes? Should I get knee sleeves? And, there's just been a few like Spanish squats, whatever that one's called, the
extensions.
Knee extensions. It is a bit of, I don't know if it's snake oil, a bit knees over toe-ish, like the walking backwards. Man, that shit's really good, like especially on the true form, up the resistance, walking backwards. And now like we're squatting pretty happily without knee sleeves, like decent weights, pause.
If you think about it, like you're in a heightened state, so like you've got aggravation of the patella. So it's like you're getting very, very quick feedback loops. Like it's hypersensitive. So it's almost the way like I kind of define it for people. When you have that super productive state of mind at work and you're like, fuck, I'm on fire today. And everything's going, and you don't want it to end. So you just want to put all your hardest tasks within that window. It's kind of like the same scenario except training. So all your feedback loops are heightened and faster. And we were talking about earlier how most people have an avoidance mindset when all it means is slow down, pay attention and tinker. Because if you're creating instability through your squat, all right, so your ability to distribute forces is not adequate. So you're getting stress or progressive damage on the patella. It's taking too much load, which is why it's flaring up. All right, you're now getting that feedback, so you can tinker. So you wouldn't necessarily max out. You're not going to do super high volume, but squatting at lighter weights, slowing it down and trying to find a way to squat pain-free without doing silly things, like obviously just squatting on one leg, is going to give you a lot of corrective feedback because it's instant. Like when you're not in that hypersensitive state, if you think about it, like how many people are going to be squatting with knee instability and but I'm fine, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, true.
Right. So there's no consequence, which is why there's no desire or will to improve it. Where sometimes that pain can be very beneficial if you apply a corrective mindset to it. So it's like, okay, well, let's work your brace mechanics when you back squat. Is the pain still there? No. Okay, well, this is the perfect time to deadlift moderate and light and slow. And you have 30 reps where you need to move pain free. How are you going to do that? You have to nail your bracing mechanic every time.
So pain is the guide. Right.
Almost.
So and we were talking about how most people are like, listen to your body, and we were talking about how would you define that if you asked the general pop, like someone in Gen Pop, and you're like, they would be like, oh, it means don't do the movement, but that's not what they mean. They mean don't go as heavy, don't move as fast, slow things down, like tweak. They don't mean don't deadlift.
I think maybe a bit of a closing statement on that question is the 2+ week mark. I always find is the craziest point where like you might have an injury. So let's say Tristan's hurt his knees, I've hurt my hip, Michael's hurt his ego, something like that. We've done.
That was good. I wasn't expecting that. I'm like, where's your ego? Oh, his ego. I was like, where's your ego?
Yeah, it's inflamed.
It's happened. It's happened in that line, and it's been more than 2 weeks, and it's still the same level of pain, if maybe even worse. And you keep pushing through it. Maybe it's time to get a professional opinion to really get it ironed out, to actually make sure that you have some idea, and maybe even 2 professional opinions if you're unsure about the first one. But it's time to act. Like if it's not improving over that 2 week mark, and you've been doing some of the right things, you've been slowing down, you've been focusing, like Michael said, on moving well and focusing on bracing or maybe changing things up to try and get pain free, still hurting, maybe it is time to see someone because it is actually worse than what it actually is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you just change behavior. So, like, you were tweaking things, and it's like, okay, well, I didn't adapt to that. It's still playing up. Then yeah, go get feedback. But you're still changing your behavior by doing that.
Don't
and
be
then
that person.
yeah, and then it might be a scenario where it's like, okay, you do actually have something that's like being quite a traumatic injury. They're generally rarer, which is why we say what we say, because like initially it's not like the likelihood, if it's just happened from training, like you haven't fallen and rolled your ankle, or you haven't like been in a car crash, it's a little bit different. It's very progressive. So it's not like it just comes out of nowhere. Like that knee pain will slowly build up. So you got plenty of time to respond and prevent anything that's super aggressive in terms of an injury.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So like if it's 6 months time and you come to me and you're like, yes, my shoulder still hurts, same as it did 6 months ago, and you've been still avoiding all those exercises, and you've also been avoiding getting help, it's probably like, maybe it's time. Like if you did it 2 weeks in for that injury, maybe saw someone, you'd be fully recovered by that 6 month mark, and probably even stronger than you were before. So sometimes it's good to like have an action, because doing nothing is still a choice.
Yeah.
And it's a bad choice in the sense of an injury. But let's move on. Question 2.
All right. So question 2, 3 exercises to improve my snatch.
Oh, that's Michael's question. It's not mine.
Well, okay. Well, I'm going to be pretty straightforward here. Snatch.
Well, that's got to be number 1, right?
Yeah. I'm big on whatever you're looking to improve has to still be in there for you to get transfer. So a lot of the time I'll be like, oh, I want to improve my running, but you're not running. And it's like, we can do all the drills we want to improve mechanics, but if we don't make you run at some point, all right, there's no specificity, it's not going to transfer into running. So
that's the thing you said, where you like swim on land, right? If you swim on land, you're still not going to be better at swimming in the water.
No, you're still going to get in the water and you're going to panic because you haven't learned how to breathe underwater yet. So it's like, you haven't learned how to tolerate the waves. Like there's a million variables that you need to have exposure to. So like if we were to break it down as 3 exercises, the best framework to utilize would be one that addresses a constraint. So if I look at an example, I ran a session the other day on snatching with someone, and it was the first time where I tried something different and I fully broke down what we were doing in front of them. Normally I do it beforehand, all right, and then I come out and I just take them through the session. And I was like, stage 1, identify constraints. Stage 2, break down the movement, see how the constraints play out through the movement. All right, so we record it, we watch it in slow-mo. Stage 3, we build the movement back together and we execute our changes. Now, like she just happened to be here earlier, which meant I could do that in front of her, but it was like a very, very progressive session because everything we were doing had a purpose and they were able to see that. It's like, oh, okay, I got to see the work behind the scenes that most people wouldn't necessarily see. The first thing we did there was just identify movement constraints. So it was like, all right, let's assess ankle mobility. Let's have a look at lower back stability. Let's have a look at thoracic mobility. Let's look at shoulder flexion. So we broke it down joint by joint. All right, we've got another guest here too. And then we identified a couple of constraints, and then we ran and broke down the snatch. All right, and we just broke it down as the pull phase, the catch phase, and we identified how they were working there. And then we ran drills for it, and then we put it all back together.
So it's almost like a guided discovery of like, oh, if I give you these drills, it's because you remember when we were working on ankle mobility or wherever the deficiency is, like, oh, that's why we're doing a high pull, or that's why we're doing this, because like we've actually spent time there. That sucks. So let's practice that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's test, retest. Like
test, retest.
We have 10 movements we can run for ankle dorsiflexion. You might run them through that movement and they don't respond. So it's like, all right, we'll use the next tool. And it's like, and you just try until eventually they do respond. Like, you know, okay, sweet. Like they have poor ankle mobility in the right ankle, right? But they might not necessarily respond to all like the same drill. So you go, the previous athlete I had responded to the banded dorsiflexion stretch. All right. Now this athlete didn't. So it's like, okay, well, what else can I do? I might need to be more specific and I might need to load that position.
Yeah.
All right. And they respond a little bit more to it being loaded, and it's trying to work out those constraints. So for me, I always test at the start, then I apply what I think is going to be the filler. All right, and then I retest. So it's like, did we improve it? No. Okay, we're not necessarily responding to it. And then sometimes it'll be a dose thing where it's like, we just need more time.
Yeah, more snatching, more time.
Yeah, more time in position, things like that. So, but you'll work those things out as you run through the session. So for me personally, like if you need to improve your snatch, if you look at what that looks like, identify the constraint first. All right, so identifying the constraint, you probably know if you're someone who's super tight, like, man, I struggle squat snatching because I feel so tight overhead or the positions don't feel comfortable, then that's the first step. The first step is identify that, like, and make sure there's a drill that addresses it. So if it is thoracic extension, drill 1 is targeting thoracic extension. And then drill 2 is going to probably be something that works thoracic extension while snatching. So it might like be something like a pressing snatch balance, all right, where we slow it down, but we're still challenging the position to be able to work on it. And we might run it as a drill where we've got a bit more feedback. So one, you either have a coach who's specifically assisting you with positions and giving you live feedback. If you don't have a coach, you might run it as like a broomstick variation where you're using the uprights as a guide so that you can make sure you're balanced over the center of the ankle. And then you would just record it. Like, you're recording it anyway, so you can now have that feedback. It's a little bit delayed, but it's the next best thing.
Yeah.
And then step 3 would be put it all back together again. So now it's like you've run 30, 40 minutes on that. Now snatch again at the end and see what's changed.
So I think that happened with me and Matt. So what I was doing is I had poor, I suppose, extension of the elbow or like finishing in the squat. And so when I get to 100, a few times it hit me on the top of the head. With the steamed guest that just walked past. She saw it when it goes boop, on my head. And so we did this drill because I just wasn't really being very aggressive in that finish. So we did high power, then high hang power, then high hang, just regular squat snatch. And I did 3 sets of that complex. And then eventually I stopped being chill when I had that end point of the snatch, and I did get the confidence to kind of press more out, but I still couldn't get 100 because I just needed to do more work. I just needed to do more work. Like, I think it took me like 8 months to get 100.
And sometimes the answer is volume. Like it's not that you were doing the wrong thing. And I think a lot of people are like, muscle ups is a classic one, right? Snatch is a little bit more complex because everyone's like, oh, I know it's going to take some time. It's a little bit more challenging. But muscle ups, everyone hops from drill to drill. As well, it's like, you just didn't do enough volume. Like, did you do 100 reps of that thing? No, you did 3. So it's like, why do you expect to get a muscle up if you did 3 reps of a box turnover?
Exactly.
Like, sometimes it is just more volume. Same thing with back squatting with you guys. You wanted to increase your back squatting. Half of what you did was squat 3 times a week with a fair bit of variation. But we really extrapolated, it just accumulated to more volume.
Yeah, and it's like, so I guess moral of the story is snatch more, and exercises depend on weaknesses and limitations.
Yeah, make them specific. And if you have a lot of limitations, pick one and just run it
pick one.
Run it for 4 weeks is normally what I do. So it's like, okay, like I have an ankle constraint. I'm pulling from the floor poorly. I also am not making contact with my hips. I'm also catching and front loading my delts, and I'm not getting in a nice stack position. Just pick one. And for 4 weeks, just work the drill that works that. And then the next one, and then the next one. But if you run a 4-week protocol, chances are you're very highly likely to improve that position. There's not many people that could do something 3 days a week for 4 weeks and not get better.
Exactly.
All right. Other than that, the question 3. All right. How important is hydration for training?
Wow, the crazy one. Obviously very important, and we all know
hydration.
We all know that, you know,
it's not alcohol.
We all know
hydration.
That dehydration.
Very dehydrated.
It can be something that's very problematic for all athletes.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean a fit aid with caffeine, and it doesn't mean pre-workout.
Poor Eddie Hall.
So we know, everyone knows that, you know, well, most people should be aware that during workouts, it's basically impossible to get rehydrated with water. You obviously need electrolytes, you need salts, you need these things that actually are able to give you what you need, your body, what it needs to re-energize and then be able to recover. Water just doesn't have the molecules required. Secondly, I think people underestimate how little dehydration you need to have to affect how massive the performance effect is. I believe it's 1 to 2% dehydration can have up to a 15% impact in performance, and 1 to 2% is like 40 mils of water. So that's not much to be under the amount that you need. And a good guide for water, I always believe, it's outside training. So training, you should just drink as needed, as you feel like you need to have water. But outside of that, it's normally 1 mil per calorie, I believe, is pretty good. And that's just because consuming food, you require water to help transport nutrients. So it's just very straightforward. If you're eating if you're drinking the same amount as water, you're on a pretty good track. Obviously, some people have different variants with how they, how their body absorbs liquid and how they, move nutrients around the body. Some people might be more efficient than others, but as an average,
salt and blah blah blah.
Yeah, one per calorie is pretty straight.
And I mean, for anyone who wants to geek out on this, like basic physics around it, what's more conductive, like normal water or salt water?
Yeah.
It's always salt water. So it's like what ends up happening is like your signaling is just way faster.
Exactly.
So your body's ability to recruit more fibers and respond to things is going to be a lot quicker if you are hydrated. So a big part of performance is going to be that. It's literally just how fast your nervous system is actually able to switch on.
Wow.
Yeah. I think a high carb meal is also something that's under talked about. If you have a high carb meal before training, you should be having lots of water, like enough water to support the amount of carbs you're having.
And there's some interesting research that shows a hybrid approach, so fructose and normal carb sources. So combining a fruity carb source and a conventional carb source is meant to be optimal for performance.
Oh, wow.
Because they use different pathways, slightly different pathways.
So what I used to do would be smash black coffee and then come in and then just have a mental breakdown and then be, it's because I'm weak-willed.
I'm weak-willed, yeah.
Weak-willed.
Now you have monsters instead.
Well, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, there is a little bit of there's a bit of a thing around fiber where it's like don't have fiber before training.
Yeah.
Which is where that stigma comes around, like don't have the fruit. But it's like when you account for someone who's maybe been doing it for a long period of time, it doesn't seem to stack up.
I feel like the optimists are like, my God, like that one gram of fiber was the reason. I mean, no, it wasn't the reason that your training sucked. It was like, it just sucked.
Well, times a million by zero, it's still fucking zero.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but if you're eating shit and you're trying to optimize your fiber intake, it's still shit.
Yeah.
I think
But
it's
what if you have
important.
Metamucil?
That's it. You're safe. So I think it's just important to be hydrated. How much training is dependent. Obviously, climate is dependent. Individually, it's going to be dependent. But 1 mil per calorie of food you're consuming, making sure that you're consuming water with every meal would probably be a good idea. It's probably a good way to start.
Wow.
Glass of water with every meal, you'll probably go pretty far with that.
Yeah, I didn't actually know it was that important. That amount of hydration.
I mean, the easiest thing for most people is just start tracking. Like, just track a day, because a lot of it will be like while we track, we generally tend to improve. Like without telling someone how to lose weight, if you just made them weigh themselves every day and they didn't like seeing that number, their behaviors will naturally change. So it's like without even being told what to do. So it's the same thing. You'll see that your water intake is super low and no one even needs to say anything. You'll naturally try and change the outcome and you'll just increase your water intake.
Yeah, even doing
water. I'm thirsty now. So.
Yeah, well, even
see, I'm ready.
Yeah, well, I've hated this. It's a little personal thing about like, oh man, we walk around with a mega processing computer in our pocket, and now we never get thirsty because we've all got our own individual water bottles, and that's just my own little social commentary. Yeah. But now it's like I don't drink enough water, so now at work I have a stupid little fucking water bottle that I fill up, and I try to fill it up 3 times because that means I've had 3. Because Uncle Tyler's recommendations of mil per calorie, and so if I've had 3 liters before training, I'm a good boy. And minimum I'll have 2.
Yeah.
And I know I do that because I fill up the water bottle twice, and it takes that level of explicit, like I did do the thing, for me to actually get it done. It's not a nebulous goal of have more water and then you have a glass and where's the glass, and you don't actually factor it into your day.
Yeah, it's become like more of a constant behavior change. That's good. Other than that, we'll move on to question 4. How can I get my feet to touch the bar in a toes to bar? So it's in the name. Your toes need to make contact with the bar for the rep to count.
Good stuff.
So it is a very important part of the toes to bar.
If you're not doing that, what is it called then?
It's just
a toasty bar.
Yeah, it's
no
just
toast.
Toes around about the bar.
Go to my toast to bar.
Close enough bars.
So. Close enough.
Yeah, it's maximal effort.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Like, I guess this applies to the person that has all the kipping patterns and the shapes. They just don't quite have the height. And
it'd be the same principle or the same framework that we followed for the snatch. Yeah. So defining the top 3 exercises. Yeah. Your process would be exactly the same for that person.
Exactly. Find the biggest sticking point. I find for many people it's just inadequate lat activation or the ability to push down on the bar. We always think The further you travel behind the bar, the less effort you have to lift your feet. And then what is a harder muscle to train? It's your lats versus your hip flexors. It's definitely going to be your hip flexors. They're a smaller muscle. It's a little bit more awkward. You can't load them very well. And for many people, their hamstring mobility also doesn't allow them to get as high. So for them, it's going to be easier to just be stronger in the lats and focus on pushing down on the bar a little bit more than it is going to be to get your legs up a little bit higher. You also see people who maybe get 1 or 2 toes to bar. They're just kicking the bar, like karate kicking it.
Yeah.
And that's because they're not pushing down far enough, but maybe they have a little bit better hip mobility, so hamstring mobility and hip flexor strength. They can lift their legs a little bit more, but that's really fatiguing. You do that 5 or 6 times and you're done. Like you're missing the bar after a few reps.
And you have options. Like when we coach athletes, so for example, if the constraint is mobility, posterior chain mobility, they can't fold very well. So you just do a seated forward fold, they can't touch their toes. Well, then they need to be stronger with their press, because the further back they go, so the stronger they work with, or the more they can work with the upper body, the less they have to fold. So now they can either get stronger or more mobile, or they could do both.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's vice versa. If you don't have the strength, all right, and you might want to improve your mobility, you don't need to go as far back because you can compress your body better.
Yeah.
So it just depends which one you feel is, like Ty said, your lowest hanging fruit, or the one you can move the fastest. We normally will move both.
Yeah.
So we'll always try and address both constraints. In conjunction, it just tends to work better.
I feel like as well, the recommendation straight away would be just doing more toes to bar. That's always a good start.
Yeah, spend more
Or
time
trying more toes to bar, would you say?
Trying to do more toes to bar and
Or the hip
focusing on
re-grip.
that strong push down. I'd combine that with probably movements that imitate what the goal is that we're trying to achieve from a loaded variation, whether that is a pull-up on the rig, which is a little bit less specific, or a bit more specific is like a tall kneeling lat pull down, or a tall kneeling cable pull down, or push down, however you want to say it. They're just going to strengthen the lats in the position that we have with our midline also challenged slightly, and it focuses on obviously a strong push down. It focuses on activating those muscles. You can obviously do this from more of a single variation where you've got like a dumbbell lat sweep where you're pausing at end range, but that's a bit more specific to toes to bar. If you have a massive pull-up or you do many pull-ups unbroken, I guarantee you're not someone who struggles at pushing down on the bar. You probably just struggle with the idea of activating that muscle groups. And then that's when just doing more kipping, more like kip and re-grips, where that's going to be over-exaggerated and emphasized, is going to be more beneficial. So,
Perfect. I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
If you don't know where to start and this overwhelmed you and you want some help, we do have programs that we can send you. You can just comment on this. If you comment toes to bar, we'll send it to you for free.
Yeah.
Other than that, last question, question 5. This is one that I actually really like touching on. Hybrid v specialization.
Ooh.
So we're seeing the big push in the hybrid space at the moment. For me, I like to define what hybrid means. Hybrid.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Does it
I
mean
love
you
questions.
used to be a bodybuilder and so you're jacked and then you do a bit of running and then you're a hybrid athlete?
It's like you used to be natural.
Yeah.
Or like you used to be unnatural. Actually, is the newest thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm natural. I just wasn't natural.
Yeah, I did drugs.
But I'm natural now. I don't take them anymore.
Does it mean that you have no idea what you want to do, so you're trying everything and you realize you're good at nothing, so
Yeah,
you just
that's
say
me.
you're hybrid.
Yeah.
So you're like average at everything. You're better than like most people at one specific thing, but you wouldn't be better at the expert who does it. So then you can be like, well, I'm a weekend warrior. I'm that hybrid athlete. I do competitions that have like 9 different elements that no one cares about. Or are you someone who specializes and does one thing very fucking well, but struggles to walk up the stairs?
Yep.
Tristan.
Tristan's definitely a hybrid athlete.
I definitely think it was something that we spoke about this a little bit from a behavior point of view.
Yeah.
It was something that was always going to happen, and it's very predictive. There is some content that I'd like to touch on, which we'll maybe touch a little bit on here, where like for me personally, if I'm predicting anything, it's going to be the death of the fitness industry, which is to do with just the way money's come into the fitness industry and how they target things, which we'll touch on in a second. But this hybrid versus specialization, if you look at novelty is what everyone's addicted to at the moment. So we have the iPhone 15, they're about to drop the iPhone 16. Do we need a new iPhone? What's the difference? How much value does it give us? Actually, it gives us fuck all. With this, like, we're at the point where it's just a slight increase in camera and we barely notice. Right? It's like the point of recording in 4K. We can we can't post 4K in most things, but we want the 4K camera,
Yes.
and it's like we're only going to post in 1080p.
Or 8K.
There's circumstances where it's valuable, but for most people it's not. But most people will want that.
Yes.
All right. So hybrid does kind of target a bit of that novelty where people just don't want to do the same thing all the time. All right. So they get to come in, they get to do a day where they're doing running. Then they get to come in, they get to do a day where they do squatting. Then they get to come in, they get to do a day where they do sleds, and they do a bit more time-based rather than task-based, which is what CrossFit did really well. So nothing against CrossFit, but if you really break down their training methodology, the delivery of it and how they guide it, it really just played on that novelty element really early. All right. They were one of the first ones to get into the game where human behavior was going that way because that's how society was training it. All right. As we chase convenience, all right, we're also now going to have more time. What do we do with that time? We look to fill it with other things. All right. So we can only fill it with so much, which means we just end up doing more things. All right. So it's like, it's only going to get more popular. There is going to be people who are very disciplined who will go for specializations, but majority of people are always going to go for novelty.
Yeah. I think as well, like the current argument of specialization is, oh, it's too boring. I don't want to do just the same thing all the time. And I say to that, I feel like those are the type of people who will do well at something for a little bit, then they start to get stagnant because, you know, obviously diminishing returns and plateaus and, you know, there's barriers, and like Michael said, limitations will start to kick in, and you just have to try and, you know, do that hard thing of doing the same thing for 4 weeks.
You need delayed gratification.
Yeah, it is, but they're not getting that instant. With CrossFit, the reason why it's so addicting is because there's 150 plus movements.
Yeah.
Like, you spend your first 2 years trying to learn all of them, then you become RX at maybe like the 3 or 4 year mark because you can do all of them. Then at the 5 to 10 year mark, you are really good at most of them, bad at some of them. And because you're like, oh, well, I really hate thrusters and they really suck and they're the worst movement ever, but I love power cleans. They're my favorite movement and I just keep progressing in it, but like, I'm not progressing in the thruster. Like, that's what keeps you going. Like, you're just good at power cleans, and maybe you're good at power snatches, and maybe you're good at squat snatches, and maybe you should be an Olympic lifter, but you're like, oh, like, I don't really know if I want to specialize and do 2 things all the time, because you just don't know if you're going to be really good at those things, you know, because you can't commit to them. But in your back pocket, you know that you've got this little variety token. You're like, oh, I can do some cardio sometimes, and I can do some strongman and some bodybuilding, and you like that.
Would you say there's an element of, there's some words and some concepts I think we're avoiding in the modern era, and one word which has religious connotations, sacrifice, right? Like, there's an element of sacrifice in specialization, and that is, you know, the fact that you do have to give up on a few things in order to go for that goal. Like, for example, like, I'll accept it. Like, if I do powerlifting with a bit of CrossFit, like, my powerlifting is like beginner, novice, but I'll keep trying. But
Really hard.
I could be a hybrid dude who's maybe like pretty strong for CrossFit, or I can be a pretty shitty powerlifter and go hang out with these really big fucking amazing dudes that are squatting 2.75 times body weight. Just saying.
Yeah.
And 3 times the body weight.
And neither's
You know?
wrong. Like, I think in the modern era, like, whatever's going to give you consistency. So whatever you can do, I always say to clients, are you going to do it for 10 years?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're going to do it for 10 years, then that's great. And like, for me personally, and the way we see things play out, training is seasonal, and sometimes you can box yourself in a corner where you can put all your eggs in one basket. So it's like, we see it with running at the moment. Running's a big thing. But then in 6 months' time, they're doing nothing.
Yeah.
But it's like, you haven't learned to swim, you haven't learned to road bike, you haven't learned to hike, you haven't learned to do cross country, you haven't learned to kayak. All right. Like, all these things could have just been things you rotated between. So you did 3 months of running, and then you did your event, and now you needed a break because your body's a little bit beat up. So now you go do swimming. All right. A little bit low impact, still maintain fitness, you're still active. That's fine. And that's actually how fitness tends to work for most people that don't specialize. That's where CrossFit tends to be as well. Like, people will drop off, they'll go back to bodybuilding for 3 months, then they come back into the group class. Like, completely normal. All right. And I think sometimes we need to understand that. Like, it is very seasonal. You watch athletes, they're not doing CrossFit all year round. Like, same thing. They've been demanding a season for that reason. Like, they want to have a break and they want to go just swim or just run or just back squat.
I suppose, like, for me, what my issue was with the running is being circular and just being like, 6 months of running training, get the same time on my half marathon, then go lift heavy. Oh yeah, what about running? I've got to go back. Now I'm starting exactly where I was 6 months ago, do that same running program. You know, like I did it in a very unintelligent way, which meant I was just chasing my tail.
That's it.
And so
If you extended the timeline long enough, you probably still move the needle.
Yeah.
So like if you did that over 20 years, like you probably do improve things.
I
yeah,
feel like hybrid approach is one of the greatest things in the sense of finding what you actually truly enjoy.
Yeah.
I feel like if I applied an analogy for some people at home, hybrid training is like the military when you're out of school. You have no idea what you want to do with your life, so you kind of join the military to give you some experiences, both good and bad, to then realize that life is actually pretty good in some senses.
It's like on a tapas restaurant.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything, right? You want to just try a little bit, like, you know, when you go to the buffet, you go around, you get a bunch of food, and you're like, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come back for seconds to get the item that you really like the most. That's what I like about hybrid training. You can try a whole bunch of sports like CrossFit. You can try pretty much every modality there is out there in the fitness world in one little egg. And then you realize, like, far out, I love handstands and I like squatting heavy, but like this cardio thing, it's just not for me. Like my body feels horrible. I get hurt every time I do it. Then that's maybe your bigger focus, right? You come in and do those things and you really enjoy it and you start to specialize in those things and progress really far. You might still jump in and do some CrossFit classes here and there and still have that novelty in your life, but the majority of your training is focused on, you know, the thing that you enjoy the most. And then if you don't know what that is, like I said, you've got so much opportunity to play around with so many different elements and figure that out. Like, and that's why I said with the thruster and the power clean thing, you'll very quickly find in CrossFit what you're not good at and what you're very good at. And then if you want something to focus on, just do the thing you're very good at. Like CrossFit's big thing about working your weaknesses is awesome if you're trying to be really good at CrossFit. But if you want to try and be really, really good at something, your body, like the sport that you play never picks you. Like, so other way around, it picks you, you don't pick your sport.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're 6'9", you're going to play basketball or you're going to swim. And if you're 5'2", you're probably going to do CrossFit because you're short, right? It's just how it is. It's like, you know, you could do it. You could be a swimmer as a 5'2" man, but probably not going to do very well compared to the genetically gifted 6'9" dude who can swim half the pool before you even kick off.
Big flippers.
That's it. So that's probably my main thing with that is the hybrid approach is great until you find exactly what you want to do, and then it might be a good opportunity to specialize and become really good at something so that you feel fulfilled and you've got an achievement sense and you're like, yes, like I'm really good at this.
Yeah, and people want flexibility from behavior. Like they want to be able to choose. They want choice.
Yeah.
Like this whole thing of, I suppose if you break it down to like freedom, it's like they want to be able to choose what they want to do. And sometimes it changes. Like sometimes they want to hurt, sometimes they want to lift heavy, sometimes they want to sweat. Like, and hybrid does allow that. And I don't think either is good or bad. It's just up to whatever the client is getting the fulfillment from and is actually getting improvement from is fine.
Yeah.
Like in that current circumstance. And I think to close out, like that kind of leads us into what we were talking about before. Just wanted to kind of pick your guys' brain, but where the fitness industry is going. So if we look at a lot of the business models, you've got big money that's come in, franchise models become super positive. We know for a fact that what most people just need is accountability. All right. Now we know that because people come to us for personal training all the time. It's one of like our biggest growth sectors. We don't offer anything sexy other than just accountability and coaching. So you know there's a demand for that. Yet the business model that keeps getting replicated, it's, someone's doing this, so let's all do this, seems to be let's open a site, all right, and let's just put in all the nice to haves. So how do you get them in? You offer Pilates. How do you get them in? You offer nice lighting. You offer a place for them to put their phone to record their content. You give them lemon water. You give them sauna. You give them towels. Like, we're adding in all these additives, heart rate monitors. Now you get to track yourself in there, and we're gamifying novelty when all that people actually desire is like, I feel like shit. I don't fit into my wedding dress anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be like this. I want to lose weight and get into my wedding dress. Did any of these other things help someone lose weight? No. Did someone actually contacting them and being like, hey, like, you should get to the gym, Susie. Like, it's been a week. Let's get back on track now. And the more the fitness industry keeps going down that way because everyone is basically doing it, it's like, but everyone has a sauna, so we should get a sauna. The more it's leaving a gap for that. And that's what we're tending to see. So it'd be very interesting in the next 5 years, because we get a lot of data shared with us, and there's a lot of facilities that are struggling at the moment. And they all tend to be facilities that aren't focusing on coaches' accountability and results, where like your product is helping the client. Like it's not giving the client all this access to these things. Like you're not an access gym. We're not World Gym. Like most of these semi-private studios, you're not that. Like you are trying to build a model around coaching, around accountability, around attention and community, things that you're not going to get when you're paying like a low rate for access. I don't know what your guys' position is on that, but it just seems to be going more and more down that way, and we're just seeing more and more gyms fall over.
Well, one of the things I think is really good about this facility is like, I would say it's person-centered, as in like there'll be little things that happen here where like you guys might remember what's wrong with my snatch and some drills that I might be able to do. And then I'll go off and do them. And then another person might have a similar issue. And then there's that really almost not tribal, but that very essence of humanity, community type vibe. I know that's a kind of an overused term, community.
We've seen this before, yeah.
Yeah, but there's that whole like actual people talking with actual people solving actual problems, not lying, I suppose. Like, for example, I've got a really dear friend who's just started, has had like pretty severe cardiac events. And so he's welcomed in. And like one of the things I think is a really powerful thing is like he told me that Tyler like messaged him like after he'd signed up and said, oh, you know, what classes are you planning on getting to? Because like, oh, like we want to support you. Seems to, for me, that's the feeling I get when I come in here. And that's worth a lot more than, well, I suppose anything for what I'm looking for in a place that I'm going to spend a decent amount of my time. I want to spend it with people that, you know, matter to me and who hopefully I matter a little bit too, rather than that depersonalized, almost AI-ish type, you know, highly mechanized, you know, monitors and this, that, and the person element of it is somewhat eliminated through all the technology.
I mean, we talk about a lot, like it's the problem solution cycle, and it's like the problem isn't that people need a sauna. Like it's not that they need lemon water. Like that's not the problem. They're not active and they're not disciplined.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I said last podcast, like how many, or probably in one before, I think it was, how many times have you seen a sauna improve your deadlift?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like absolutely freaking zero. Like unless you are like beat up like shit and you're adding it to your recovery method, maybe 1%. But at the most, like I've never gotten into a sauna, got out of it and fucking pulled 250. Like it's just not happening. What I have done is consistency, showing up every day, constantly working on my weaknesses, developing and obviously adjusting, focusing on weak points, like what the coach is there to help you do and to fast track. And I think I heard this thing from Dr. Mike Israel today, and it was like I was telling Michael about it, and he was saying that like he used to show up to jiu-jitsu gyms, random jiu-jitsu gyms, and just do jiu-jitsu. And he's like, what am I doing? Like, I am getting nothing out of this. And then he's just like, I'm going to get a coach. So he just found someone who knew what they were doing, who already made all the mistakes, who is experienced in the field, to fast track his performance. And that's what a coach is. Imagine a coach is a pay to win way to fast track your performance.
Yeah.
They've already made
it
mistakes.
is.
They're like, hey, I've done this before. Like I've screwed up. And then like, if you want to play the free to play version, you can come do the class or you can come to the facility in your own time and learn it by yourself and, you know, spend more time. You'll still get there, but the time periods will just take longer. Whereas if you want to get there now or sooner, or at least achieve that goal with guidance and professional guidance, and that's what the coaching is.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not just wandering off path to stumble back on it once you've realized you've gone off path. The coach will put those guardrails in so that you can basically walk the path that's going to optimize your
bowling.
Yeah, and I mean, like a lot of the best coaches, a lot of the best coaches that you'll see in the world, like you're not going to see the coach on Instagram because he's coaching. Yeah. So it's like he's working with clients or he's problem solving, doing programs. He's not putting his fucking camera across the road and then filming himself walk across the road without his shirt on. Like if you're seeing someone always posting themselves on social media, where do you think they're getting their time from, and where do you think their time's spent?
And where are they placing their value, right? Because how you spend your time, right?
Because they could have been a really good coach, but now they're not coaching anymore. Now they're just doing content. So all their skill is getting lost, and all they're doing is developing their social media. So it's like, why would you go to an influencer for coaching? They're not coaching. Like that's my value equation. My value equation, I want someone who's making money teaching me how to make money, not he made money 30 years ago and now he doesn't make money anymore. Like
he's retired, he's making passive income,
like still doing the thing and still improving the thing,
still
and it's
in the
like
trenches.
as where you just don't see that anymore. Like half these, like I was on our Unbound this morning and I'm like unfollow. I don't, for some reason half these influencers have been followed. All they do is post themselves training with their shirt off, but they're coaches, and I'm like, but you're not coaching. Like,
what value are you giving your clients
and the community?
Like it blows my mind. Like because it's like where your attention goes is what grows, but it's like their skill is meant to be helping other people, coaching. So it's like we said, like the value is the accountability, and at some point this is just going to pivot, because it's like it's playing on the element that someone wants to be like them. So it's like, I want to look like him. I think he's sexy, or he has the abs that I want, or she has the butt that I want. That doesn't mean they're going to get you it.
No, most of it's genetic, right?
Yeah.
Like 99% of it is genetic or steroids. That's what you
Or
realize.
Sour Patch Kids.
Sour Patch Kids.
That's it. Well, I think that's going to cover up our 5 questions. Tristan, I think you need to go back to work.
I do really need to go back to work. I'm so sorry, Jamie.
Your boss is like, where's my
special drink?
He needs his caffeine.
Can I give you this?
Yeah, you can.
You need to take him back some electrolytes.
That's it. Fantastic, guys. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to follow us on YouTube, like and subscribe, and we will catch you on Q&A number 4 next week.